Israel's far-right finance minister says he wants to cut Palestinian banks off from the global financial system. The plan has not yet been approved by the Israeli government, but if it does happen, what could be the consequences? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. It's good to have you with us. I'm Cyril Vanier. Israel's far-right finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, has moved to scrap a system that allows Palestinian banks to deal with the outside financial world. If his plan becomes reality with Israeli government backing, it would collapse the entire Palestinian banking system. And we'll explain how it operates in more detail in a moment. But in summary, for now, the long-standing arrangement gives certain Israeli banks permission to deal with Palestinian ones through the use of so-called waiver letters. These give legal protection and financial guarantees to transactions. Scrapping this globally backed system would cut Palestinians off from the financial world and economically cripple the Palestinian Authority. Smotrich has tried to do this before, but international pressure stopped him just last year. So why is he attempting it again? And could he succeed this time? And if so, what would be the consequences? We'll discuss all this with our guests in just a moment. First, though, this report from Hammouri.
Israel's far-right finance minister has announced plans that threaten the entire Palestinian banking system. Bezalel Smotrich announced on Tuesday he's cancelling a long-standing arrangement that allows designated Israeli banks to deal with Palestinian counterparts. This ensures payments of salaries, fuel and utility bills, and payments for other essential goods in the occupied West Bank. The EU has condemned the move.
The European Union is deeply concerned by the instruction by Israel's finance minister Smotrich to cancel the waiver on cooperation with Palestinian banks, which could cut them off the Israeli financial system, devastate an already crippled Palestinian economy, and may lead to the collapse of the Palestinian Authority.
Smotrich made the announcement hours after 5 countries imposed sanctions on him and ultranationalist minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. The UK, Norway, Canada, New Zealand and Australia jointly accused the ministers of inciting extremist violence and serious abuses of Palestinian human rights. Both men have voiced views supporting the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians and annexing Gaza.
This hypocrisy, on a personal level, it doesn't bother me. I think that on a national level, there is something very bad and very dangerous here. In coordination with the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, we will formulate a whole package of steps against these countries, against the Palestinian Authority, and also the settlements, to make sure that we don't ignore this.
The banking arrangement is due to expire in November. The Palestinian Monetary Authority says there's no risk of banks collapsing and people's deposits would be safe. Smotrich tried to cancel the banking arrangement last year, but the Israeli government was pressured to extend it by the Biden administration. With Donald Trump now in the White House, other world powers, along with Palestinians, are waiting to see what the Israeli government will do next. Hammouri, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
So let's bring in our guests today. Raja Khalidi is Director General at the Palestine Economic Policy Research Institute. And Raja, you're joining us from Ramallah. Also joining us from Amman, Jordan, is Shahd Hammouri, lecturer in international law at the University of Kent. And also joining us from Ramallah is Mustafa Barghouti, Secretary General at the Palestinian National Initiative. A warm welcome to all of you. My first question will go to the two gentlemen who are in Ramallah. You live in this Palestinian economy, you work in this Palestinian economy, and it stands to be crippled, right, deeply wounded if this plan by Smotrich goes ahead. So I'd like to know, and without getting into the political issues, of which there are many, which I know you'll want to address, I'd like boots on the ground vision of what happens tomorrow if Israeli banks stop cooperating and working with Palestinian banks. And we'll take this one to Mustafa.
Well, if they do that, you see, it's very important to understand that much of the economic operations that are happening in the West Bank as well as in Gaza, they used to be in Gaza, have to go through the Israeli economic system and using the Israeli currency, the shekel. And cutting off any communication between Palestinian banks and Israeli banks means that these operations will be suspended. They will not function, which includes purchase, includes export, includes import, includes all aspects of economic activities, even buying fuel. This is a hit to the whole economy, and it would paralyze the economy. And by the way, the measures they are taking are not only one. There are two other measures that are happening already. One is a suspension of transfer of tax revenue to the Palestinian Authority. And we're talking about more than $2 billion of Palestinian money that Israel has conducted piracy again and is not transferring to the Palestinians. And second, as you know, the Israeli currency of shekels is now stuck in Palestinian banks, and Israel refuses to take them. And by doing so, they are also disabling the Palestinian banks from being able to operate and function. In summary, these three measures are aiming at dismantling the whole Palestinian economy. And they are not only directed at the Palestinian Authority, they are directed at the authority, but also at the Palestinian civil society, and also, most importantly, at the Palestinian private sector.
Raja, what difference would it make to the day-to-day life of somebody like yourself? And question B, what difference would it make to, say, a Palestinian laborer who works in Israel and gets his salary from Israel?
Well, most of the economy is connected one way or the other to Israel. As Mustafa, showed us, you don't need an economist to tell you the way, things will fall if this measure goes through. So certainly we're talking about up to half of the Palestinian economy includes transactions with Israel. So payments by Israelis in shekels will not be affected in principle. Many of those workers who used to be registered, at least, had started receiving their salaries through banking systems, so that won't be possible. On the other hand, the vast majority of Palestinians working today in Israel are illegal or undocumented or without permits, and hence are being paid cash anyhow. So one of the points that Mustafa referred to is this buildup of over $3 billion equivalent of Israeli shekels in the Palestinian economy, which the Israeli central bank, contrary to agreements with the Oslo agreements, Paris agreements, is refusing to cash or to exchange for hard currency. So that, accompanied with this threat to cut banking relations, obviously is not just going to disrupt the economy, but will certainly create a chaos unseen hitherto, and that will be translated immediately into a increasing tendency to informal black market activity, including some of the trade with Israel. I mean, will continue being paid for by Palestinian importers, but most likely they will, Israeli exporters will prefer to contravene Israeli law and accepts large payments in cash, which is illegal under Israeli law, then cut off these relations. So we're facing a unilateral decision by Israel to basically disengage from the Palestinian economy while collapsing it, at least for a period of time, in terms of the disruption that it would take and how long it would take to possibly reorient the economy, restructure the economy.
Shahd, what do you see as the worst case scenario if this does come to pass?
Well, this is yet another step in very long-term colonization, and indeed asymmetric dependency, economic dependency by Israel imposed on the Palestinian has been there since 1948. But yet what we will see here is a complete collapse. As my colleagues have noted, this will mean a sharp rise in the black market, but also Israel, specifically in Gaza, pushing people through its famine only to one option, and that is engaging through the mandated specific specific spaces that it has put forward, which are through its own genocidal humanitarian aid. So at the moment, as we speak, any attempts at mutual aid in Gaza that go through in their own way the black market at the moment need to take at least 30% off their own cash to gain any money. And then they have to pay at very inflated prices through backdoor markets in order to buy very basic amenities for people who are too vulnerable to reach those aid places that we all know have become spaces of massacre. So if, as we speak now, these spaces of mutual aid have run out of cash, they don't have any place to buy anything from the black market, and it means complete dependency on what Israel is offering. Indeed, this means that the humanitarian catastrophic condition, as we see it now, that being declared a famine, will become even worse. So, and indeed, at this moment, it's impossible to imagine what could be worse. Meanwhile, in the West Bank, we're looking at people also reaching the fringes of famine, because at the end of the day, this means that Palestine cannot engage with the external world. It means it cannot send money inside or outside, aside from within the black market. Meanwhile, for Israel, this should mean a good collapse in its international legitimacy. But sadly enough, we haven't seen enough responses by the international community to condemn this. So as a part of undoing the unlawful Israeli occupation, there had to be a divorce between Palestinian banks and Israeli banks. And this was indeed one of the primary things when we call for the Paris Protocol of 1994 to be completely dismantled, in the sense that it's an infringement of basic international humanitarian principles, and it's a way that facilitates for Israel to undertake collective punishment whenever it wants. And this is indeed something that
Shahd, pause for a second, because you're making the point that in the spirit of ending the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory, there had to be a divorce between the Israeli banking system and the Palestinian banking system. Your point is well taken, but in this particular instance, obviously, and as you have all pointed out, Smotrich is not doing this in order to advance the cause of Palestinian statehood or to somehow help them become more financially independent or help their banking sector become more independent from Israel. He's doing this, according to his own statements, to punish them.
Absolutely. And this comes in direct retaliation after the multiple states mentioned have already sanctioned him. So in this case, it's a collapse both ways. It's a collapse that had to happen. But what is happening is that this collapse is becoming much faster. And indeed, the first people to pay its price are the Palestinians. And indeed, those most vulnerable will feel this economic crunch and this complete cutout from the international economy the most.
Mustafa, what happens, again, in this scenario if it does come to pass? Raja, sorry, you want to jump in? Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on something. I mean, firstly, I think we should be clear. This is not, the whole economy is not dependent on these banking relations. If these banking relations are cut, it will cut Palestinian formal banking and economic relations with Israel, but not with the rest of the world. There's a Palestinian SWIFT. Palestinians can pay, do financial transactions without going through Israel. On the one hand,
isn't Israel the lion's share of the trade of the West Bank?
Not necessarily. Yes, the lion's share of the trade. I mean, I'm not discounting
So the West Bank would lose the Palestinian economy would actually lose more than half, right? The majority of its source of income. Or majority of its transactions, I should have said.
Source of its consumptions,
right.
Source of its consumption.
Yes.
Consumption of energy, consumption of goods, but not lose it. It will turn it into a cash-based transaction, which will certainly shrink it. So all I'm saying is that there's not necessarily a total end to economic activity. There's going to be a major shock and a hard landing and some sort of a reorientation. The other thing is that this engagement, is a Palestinian strategic, supposedly, officially, and for us as economists, a strategic economic goal. But it's not a matter of separation and total breaking of relations. It's a matter of ending the colonial dependency on Israel and ending those relations. So within a two-state solution, you're talking about a reform relationship, both in trade and probably a Palestinian currency and so on and so forth. So I don't think we have to be careful about the political requirements that we see as needed, not always translate into economic measures that are feasible.
Understood. And the question I had actually was precisely about the politics of this. Mustafa, it was for you. What happens to the Palestinian Authority specifically? We've spoken about the economy of the Palestinian territory, Gaza and the occupied West Bank. Several of you have mentioned the black market and a hard landing for that economy. But talk to me specifically about the Palestinian Authority, because they pay salaries and with money that goes through the Israeli banks. So what happens if the Israeli banks are no longer involved in the system and that money and those salaries can't be paid?
Well, thank you. Without going too much into politics, I must also say that what we see today is one of the bad results of the terrible Oslo Agreement and the horrible Paris Agreement, as a matter of fact, which created very serious Palestinian dependency on the Israeli side and practically maintained the occupation and made it last. What we see here is a fascist government led by fascists like Smotrich and Barghouti conducting sanctions on occupied people, sanctions and collective punishment of the people they are occupying. And the main goal of Smotrich is not to separate from Palestinians, but to disable the Palestinians' ability to stay in Palestine. His main goal is, because all these measures are associated with unprecedented level of settlement expansion, land confiscation, huge political arrests against the people. The main goal is to force people out of this country. The main goal is ethnic cleansing. They are trying to conduct it not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. And economically speaking, all the Israeli measures since the 7th of October have been going in this direction, whether in creating huge unemployment situation in the Palestinian territories by dismissing more than 220,000 Palestinian workers, by suspending the transfer of our tax revenue, I mean, the money we pay and Israel is withholding, or by the new measures to suffocate the banking system in Palestine. What will happen to the Palestinian Authority? The Palestinian Authority is already in a big problem. This month, although it's a feast time, as they call it, they couldn't pay more than 35% of the salaries of the people. And for the last 3 years, approximately,
Mustafa,
people did not get full salaries.
I just want to make sure our viewers understand that. Government employees are getting 35% of the salary that they normally should be receiving, yes?
This month, yes. And not only government employees, but also those who are in government pension. Only 35%, but more than that. The disabling of the Palestinian Authority ability will not only mean that they will not be able to pay salaries, it also means they cannot buy medications for people, for the health insurance system. It means that cancer patients will not get treatment for their cancer. It means that the educational system will could also collapse because the Palestinian Authority will not be able to sustain it. It would also mean this will have an impact on every aspect of economic life. So we have to understand that the goal of this is really to suffocate Palestinian economy and suffocate the ability of the Palestinian people to stay on their land. It's a very clear political goal. And let me give you a very small example of the contradictive policy. In the West Bank, there are so many Israeli currency shekels in Palestinian banks, and they are suffocating because of that, and they cannot take any more in. And in Gaza, there are no currencies, nothing in Gaza. And because of that, when people receive salaries that we send to them in Gaza, they have to pay about 40% commission just to get their salary. So why? Because there is no currency in Gaza today. So they are using a double kind of activity just to suffocate the ability of the people to survive. That is the reality of what's happening.
I'll say a word about Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister, in case our viewers aren't yet fully familiar with him. Just quickly about his biography. He's a messianic settler. He lives in the settlement of Kedumim, which is illegal under international law. He's a self-declared fascist, his own words, and believes that Jews have a divine right to all the land that made up biblical Israel, and is profoundly, deeply committed. We've seen that through everything he says and does, to expanding Jewish control over the West Bank. And that's a big part of the reason we're having this conversation today. Shahd, I'm looking at the timing of this. On the same day that Mr. Smotrich was sanctioned by 5 Western nations, right, in response to their repeated incitements of violence against Palestinian communities, with both him and the National Security Minister, Mr. Ben-Gvir, who were sanctioned, he canceled the Israeli banks' collaboration with, well, that's not the right word, but Israeli banks working with Palestinian banks. What does it signal? He is punished by 5 Western countries, and on the very same day, he says, I'm going to do this, which I very well know would cripple the Palestinian economy. In fact, he said in an interview to the Jerusalem Post, that's the reason I'm doing it.
Well, this is the far-right extremism showing itself in its full face. Indeed, he is shooting himself in the foot. The fact that the UK and other European countries have gone towards sanctioning him and Ben-Gvir, other than sanctioning the whole of Israel, as should be on the basic premises of international law. All states have the duty to sanction the Israeli economy in its totality, given the level of crimes committed by the state of Israel. Instead, they opt to only sanction a very small bit of it, which is only 2 people. And that is somewhat sympathetic by the European countries. And yet, instead of responding to that, and instead of seeing the fact that actually Europe is giving Israel a helping line in order to survive in despite its current crimes, what they're doing is actually escalating the extremism and demonstrating the short-sightedness of far-right policy. Indeed, what he is doing here is further escalating the humanitarian crisis. Under international law, this can easily be seen as an act of collective punishment. It is in violation of the basic principles of international finance, where decisions ought to not be on arbitrary premises, but be on a risk basis. Here, this is just simply arbitrary. So he is further disconnecting Israel from the larger world economy, as Israel is actually, despite it showing good economic indicators, it is actually being downgraded in credit agencies such as Moody's, for example, and it is seeing a lot of economic repercussions with Israeli corporations actually paying billions to market what otherwise would have taken from them much less to market. So what he's doing is escalating that collapse and further alienating Israel from its closest allies in response and in retaliation to this act. So again, this does seem like even a childish move at his end, and whether or not the Israeli government in its current hype of far-right fascistic movement will take this forward will lead indeed to the escalation of the collapse of the Zionist project as we know it. We don't know where this will lead, but we will know, well, what we know is it will lead to complete chaos moving forward, and this is indeed not a wise position to be taken, even in defense of their overall project.
Raja, I noticed something that I'd like your thoughts on. So we said that Smotrich was responding to sanctions, travel bans, and asset freezes put on him by 5 countries, right? The UK, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, and I'm missing one, Canada. There you go. So I went back to read the UK government statement, and they say Smotrich is Minister for Finance and Additional Minister of Defense, but is sanctioned in his personal capacity. And they say the same thing with Ben-Gvir. He's Minister for National Security, but is sanctioned in his personal capacity. What do you make of that? They're threading a needle here.
Well, I mean, threading a needle. I think about it is much more significant. First, this is a threat by an Israeli minister. It's nothing more than that right now. It has yet to be adopted as government policy, and certainly it has yet to be approved by the Americans. They're not going to go through it unless they can put it in the face of the Americans, who negotiated the 12-year renewal. And therefore, they are violating an agreement that they sovereignly made to the United States. So that's one issue. And I think that might mean that this is the 3rd time in less than a year I've had an interview about Smotrich's imminent application of this indemnity withdrawal of the them. So the first thing is, I think that we should be careful about we should carefully monitor how this relates to his own agenda and his own attempts to blackmail the Israeli government alongside 15 other things that he's involved in. The other thing is that it's also important to understand that Israel, is under serious economic pressure. But when it's exporting $16 billion of arms to the world, including, I should add, I think 1.8 to the Arab states, I don't think it's in a state of collapse. Now, we're the ones who are collapsing, for sure. Israel faces strategic threats and dangers to its economy, for sure. But right now, he still has Smotrich is still in a position to wield the stick. But I think, at the same time, we should be careful not to see it as apocalyptic. And I think that there are a lot of things both the banking sector and the PMA can do to absorb excess liquidity, to reorient trade or transactions, and international community should be doing, rather than extending symbolic gestures of recognition of statehood. The IMF and the world, the creditors and multilateral development banks should be extending sovereign loans to the Palestinian treasury so that it can withstand this war of economic genocide, if you wish.
Mustafa, so I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Raja. I do think it's interesting that these Western nations make a move that is not insignificant by announcing sanctions on Israeli cabinet ministers. But then if you actually read the text, they go to great lengths to say we are not sanctioning them as ministers. We are not going against Israel. We're not going against the government of Israel, even though they are members of this government. We are going against them just as individuals who have made statements that we disagree with. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a silly policy, actually. Of course, we support the fact that they are imposing sanctions on these two fascist individuals. But the reality is that this is the policy of the Israeli government, not just these two ministers. And Smotrich is, as is said in their statement, is not only the finance minister, he's also partially a defense minister. He's practically the governor of the West Bank because he took all these responsibilities as a condition of his participation in the government. And everything that he's doing is the policy of the Israeli government. The same applies to Ben Gvir. So in reality, what you see here is an effort to do something without really having a serious impact on the whole Israeli system or on the whole Israeli government. And once again, I do agree that what we need is not just another recognition. We welcome recognition because it confirms the right of the Palestinian people for self-determination, but it's not enough. And these individual sanctions are not enough. Israel is committing 3 war crimes: the war crime of genocide, the war crime of collective punishment, and the war crime including starvation of people in Gaza, and the war crime of ethnic cleansing. And they declare openly and clearly, Netanyahu declares that, not just Smotrich. And Netanyahu is wanted by the International Criminal Court. So why not sanction also Netanyahu?
I want to thank our guests. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Thanks for your time, for helping us calibrate this, understand how it works, and what may happen as a result of this if it is implemented. Raja Khalidi, Shahd Hammouri, and Mustafa Barghouti. And thank you, too, for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website. That's aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X, our handle there, @AJ Inside Story. From me, Cyril Vanier, and the whole team here in Doha, bye for now.